Thank you. Okay, committee, so because the chair isn't here, we need to elect a chair for this meeting. So somebody could nominate a member to chair this meeting.
Yes, I'd like to nominate Councillor Brock, please.
Seconded.
All in favour?
Thank you, Lucy. Thank you, everybody. Good evening all. Welcome to this meeting of the South Oxfordshire District Council General Licensing Committee. I'm Councillor Jo Bob and I'm now chairing this evening's meeting. This meeting is being held at our office in Abbey House, Abingdon, and voting members are here in person as required by the legislation, but officers and public speakers are able to join remotely if they wish through Microsoft Teams. This meeting is being streamed live on the Council's YouTube channel for public viewing. Two procedural matters for those joining remotely, and do we have any people joining us remotely at the moment, Lucy?
We only got officers.
Thank you. Okay. Shall I go through that procedure? But if anyone does join us remotely, please make sure your microphone is muted and your camera is off. Thank you. And if councillors wish to ask a question, please could you raise your hand. Just some minor housekeeping announcements, evacuation procedure, which I think you all know by now, but in the event of an emergency, please could you evacuate the building by the nearest exit, which Lucy is indicating now, which is immediately on the right once you leave this room. And then could we meet in assembly at assembly point 9 outside the fire exit. And Lucy will help us when we're out there. On arriving at the meeting, you should have read the emergency evacuation procedure and signed the fire register. Could everyone please switch off their mobile phones or turn them to silent? And when the meeting has ended, I'll ask for confirmation from Lucy that the live stream has ended. And at that point, please could you leave the virtual meeting if you're joining remotely? And don't forget to sign out as you leave. Lucy, do we have apologies for absence?
We do, Chair. We have apologies from councillors Anne-Marie Simpson, Catherine Keats-Rohan and Ali Gordon-Creed.
Thank you. Minutes. The committee is asked to adopt and agree for me to sign as a correct record the minutes of the committee meeting on the 15th of May 2025. Could I have a proposer to adopt those minutes as a correct record? I'll take Councillor James Laurie. Thank you, Sam. Seconded by Councillor MacDonald. Thank you. Do we all agree that those are accurate? Thank you very much. I will sign those minutes after this meeting. Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest or disclosable pecuniary interest or any conflicts of interest relating to items on tonight's agenda? No, thank you. Urgent business. I have no urgent business. So our first substantive item is the review of the joint charity collections policy. And I will now hand over to the officers to introduce this report. Laura Driscoll and Diane Foster, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everybody. The purpose of this report today is to bring before you a new joint charity collections policy for approval. It's, as I said, a new policy which in the main collates our existing practices for house-to-house collections and street collections and looks to ensure that we facilitate well-organised collections which benefit charities and good causes and promote fairness of opportunity for collection dates. I want to be really clear that we're not trying to restrict or penalise charities. So, for example, a charity will still be able to apply for a permit for a week-long street collection, as is always the case with the annual Royal British Legion Poppy Appeal. But we're in the main trying to avoid the situation where groups have booked a significant number of dates throughout a year and then only use one or two of those dates in the end, maybe due to lack of collectors being available. And then if they don't cancel those unwanted dates, that means that others weren't able to actually use them. So as detailed within the report, we had a consultation. We found there to be overall broad agreement for the policy, but the report does detail a few minor amendments that were made as a result from feedback from the comments that we received within the consultation report. I'm happy to answer any questions that the committee's got. I've got nothing else to add.
Thank you, Laura. I see a question from Councillor Rawlins. Go ahead, Lee.
A couple of questions, if I may.
Of course.
We're amending sections 5.2 and 6.2 to make it clear that the groups and causes that may benefit from collections don't need to be registered charities.
Yes.
But so are the collectors required to be registered in some way? But it's just the causes that may not necessarily have to be.
So an example of a good example of this, and we do already do this, is like, for example, a local brownie group might not be set up as an actual registered charity, but are quite clearly a good cause. There are quite a lot of hoops to jump through to actually set up a charity, and we wouldn't want to say that a local community group couldn't run a collection for good causes. I think they might run a collection to raise money for materials that they might use. So they require a little extra checking, because it's not as simple as going onto the charity collections website and just putting in a number and saying, yep, that's a charity, nice and easy. But we wouldn't want to rule them out from getting a permit for a street collection, if that makes sense.
Okay. But they still have to have a permit anyway. So
They would
so
still
that's
need a
fine.
permit, yeah. So it's just to add them in to make it clear that they don't have to be a registered charity. I think when we originally drafted it, it maybe wasn't 100% clear. So
The other question I had was, I noted that there may be a truncated permit process, less than 28 days, in the case of major disasters. And I'm sure that's secure, but that just gave me to a moment to ponder. Does that mean that you could get a scammer?
no, we'd still do exactly the same checks as we always
Right.
would. There would be it's no difference in the procedures. All that it means is when there is something of that nature, and I remember it happening back when I used to process street collections around the time of the tsunami in Japan, I think it was, we had a feeling, and we were sort of aware that people might go and set up events in our town centre and raise money. So we sort of kept an eye out for collections around that time. You tend to have them flagged in the inbox. People will put it in big letters on an email, so we just keep an eye out, basically.
And it's the same process, so there's no shortcut.
Exactly the same. Yeah, exactly the same. No difference at all.
Thank you, Laura. Councillor Sadler.
Yes. Can I ask 3 questions about items on agenda 7? Because obviously there's quite a lot of comments there, and then there's officer responses as well, which are great. Quite a lot of stuff there, but there's a couple of concerns. Tap and pay risks, someone refers to,
Yes.
and the officer wasn't quite clear what they could do. So I mean, I just wonder whether there was any further thoughts on that.
Yeah, the only thing we were thinking was that potentially we weren't sure whether they meant the charity or the collector putting in more than the amount that they'd actually suggested, or whether they had concerns about it going to a different going to their own bank account, something like that. So it's very difficult. What we'd suggest is, obviously, it's just the same as any transaction where you actually have to check the amount. You wouldn't just sort of blindly hold your card over something without actually looking at the screen to check the amount. And equally, there'd be no difference between where the funds go to. It wouldn't be any different to somebody who's collected cash and then sort of puts it in a different pot. Unfortunately, I would suggest it's quite unlikely, given the steps they have to go through when they do a return to say where the money's gone. It shouldn't just be one person opening the collection boxes and going through all of it. It's meant to be signed off by an accountant. So they didn't really give us an awful lot of information, unfortunately. So we weren't able to answer any more detailed.
That's an interesting point, because I suppose, do you know where the comments come from? I mean, is it something that you've clarified with the person who made the comment, or
not always? No. So when we get the consultation report, it kind of looks like this, and I think they do it anonymously so that we can, not use any unconscious bias when we're looking at what people have said. So so I don't believe we have the information in order to go back and address that. I can try and seek it from the consultation team to try and dig into it a little bit more and maybe reassure the person. So leave that with us, and we'll see what we can do.
Second question, if I may, Chair. There was a number of comments from this comment section, which referred to no cold calling. People were quite.
Yeah.
There was quite a lot of them were quite clear. We don't want cold calling, and that does mean a lot of different things to different people. And I suppose it's a bit difficult, because I suppose some of the officers' comments were, we can put stickers up saying no cold calling and so forth. I mean, I have to say, as someone who does canvassing, I tend not to take any notice of that and just not anyway. But I don't regard that as cold calling, because I know who they are.
Some people do have no canvassing stickers.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, well, I don't intend to knock on them, to be fair. So that does mean a lot of different things to different people. Is there anything else that could be done to satisfy the this kind of scared comments I'm seeing from the public about cold calling and what that means to them? Is there anything else that can be done? I mean, I think you've answered it, but.
Yeah, I think the other thing we're hoping to do, and there's something that came out in the meeting earlier when we were chatting with your colleagues from the Vale, we were sort of suggesting maybe doing a little bit more on comms to say to people, if you don't want to be putting items into a bag that's been pushed through your door, that's more to do with how much money the charity makes as a result. Put it in a black bag and just take it down the charity shop yourself, because then you know that they're getting the full amount. So anything we can do to try and reassure people that, you know, there's no sinister intentions, obviously putting information about the collections that we've authorised on our website so they can cross-check them. So we'll do a little bit of press maybe, potentially more in the lead up to maybe Christmas, when they might get a bit of a spike in this, I think. So you might get some more people around. I think quite a lot of the house-to-house collections tend to be sort of Santas on sleighs going round.
Yes, indeed. And final question. So there's an 80% threshold that's set. Now, is that Charities Commission that sets that? Because I mean, I know there was one comment on there about could it not be 90% and only 10% by the charity? That doesn't come from us, does it?
It is something we are suggesting. It is something we are suggesting. So, and the reason we're suggesting at that level is we do recognise that the businesses that deliver the bags and collect the bags, they do have expenses. They do have to pay the people who are driving around. They have to pay for fuel, the printing, so on and so forth. And we decided we felt that was a reasonable enough balance. It's difficult though, because we didn't have a lot to go on benchmarking. A lot of local authorities don't have a charity collections policy, full stop. So we haven't got a lot of data there. But obviously we use that figure as part of the consultation to see whether anybody came back and said, no, that's too high. We won't be able to, you know, do the collections. And we didn't get any real feedback on that from the actual collectors. So we have to assume that it's been sort of suggested at a reasonable level. Obviously, it's not set in stone forever, and we can always review policies in future if somebody then says, actually, no, we can't do collections anymore because that's not a realistic amount.
Thank you.
To follow on from the 80% minimum, is there anything stopping them from going lower? Because it just says suggested. So could they turn around and actually only 20% is given? Is there any way to
if they propose that as part of the application, then as I said, it'd be likely to be refused because the application won't be compliant with our policy. The only other way to find out is if when they do their return, which as I said has to be signed off by an accountant saying this is what we collected, that's what we gave to the charity. If we find from that they didn't give enough, then we'd have to obviously look into the why that happened, but it'd be likely we'd refuse future collections. So we can't prevent it from happening, but we would prevent them from collecting in future, if that makes sense.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks.
Are there any other questions? I have a very quick question, Laura, and it relates to the consultation responses. So I don't know if you're able to answer it, because obviously it was the consultation team who managed it, but I was amazed by how few town and parish councils responded. And of course, I live just outside Henley. Henley Town Council didn't respond. I know that Didcot Town Council did, I believe, and so did Wallingford. No sign of Tame Town Council either. And I would have thought that these town councils in particular would have been interested in this policy, given that they do have street collections taking place, you know, most weekend days at the very least. Did anyone from the team reach out to them, or do you think this was an uncontroversial policy change and therefore didn't warrant their response?
I suspect, I'll assume, I have to say, I'll assume the positive, I'll assume the latter, that they've looked at it and thought, no, I'm happy with that, just going to kind of let that one go by. So there are some town councils who have to provide permission for collections in their area anyway, because they own sort of the marketplace, for example. So they may be happy that they've already got a little bit of control over the collections in their area in any case, possibly. So yeah, not sure on the why, to be honest.
Thanks for that, Laura. Oh, one final one, and that was that the numbers of, and I think was it the home collection numbers have increased quite dramatically year on year. And I'm just scrolling through looking for the, does anyone remember?
I'll
that
go back up. I know it's in the report, isn't it? So they've
Yeah.
gone from 14 in 2022 to 21 in 2024. I think they could have been higher in previous years, and it would have obviously fallen off a cliff during COVID. So it maybe took a little bit of time to go back up again, I suspect. And I think that's the same for all charity collections, that everybody was sort of struggling a little bit during the pandemic, and it was hard for them to do those collections. So 2022 was obviously coming out of it, wasn't it? I know 2021 was, strictly speaking, but yeah, we didn't go back particularly far because we only retain a certain number of years worth of data on our database.
Thank you, that's great. Okay, so if there are no further questions, I'm going to invite members to, we're considering the results of this consultation, and subject to any agreed amendments, we will approve this or not approve this joint charity collections policy. Are there any amendments that members would like to propose to this policy at this stage? No. Okay. Do I have a proposer then for us to adopt this policy? Thank you, Councillor Rawlins. Great. And is there a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Sadler. Do we need to debate on this? Councillor Rawlins, we can now go into debate. Would you like to give your?
I think the case is fairly straightforward. There doesn't seem to be any serious opposition, so it's all for a good cause. Let's do it.
Yep. Any other discussion, debate? No. Okay. Thank you. Let's go to the vote then. Do councillors agree to approve this joint charity collections policy? That's unanimous. Thank you, everybody. So now we'll move on to the next substantive item on our agenda, which is the review of the joint sex establishments policy. And Laura, over to you, and Diane again. Thank you.
Thank you. So yes, this one's to bring before you a revised policy for approval. It's a revision of a 2011 policy. We've updated it to ensure it's fit for purpose, and also that it covers all types of sex establishments, because previously we only covered sexual entertainment venues. We've included within the papers an appendix to show the changes that we've made from the 2011 version. As you'll see, the policy has been drafted to suggest we believe the appropriate number of such venues in the district should be nil. A total of 3 responses were received when we consulted on the policy, with 2 respondents disagreeing and 1 respondent agreeing. The respondents who disagreed provided qualitative comments, which are detailed within the consultation report, along with officer responses. As you will see within the report, we've not made any changes to the policy as a result of that consultation and those comments, but the committee are, of course, welcome to amend the policy in view of the feedback received as they see fit, including removal of that nil policy as you see fit. As a reminder, we don't have any such businesses at present, but we just want to be properly prepared in case we ever do get an application. I did laugh a little bit last year because we did get an application through by email, but it wasn't for us, it was sent to us in error. So I had a minor heart attack last year. And that's what sort of prompted us thinking we probably do need to make sure that we do have a good up-to-date policy. Nothing else to add. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much, Laura. Are there any questions from members? Go ahead.
Just one for clarification. So this would include shops like Ann Summers, for instance, if Ann Summers want to open up in Henley, or is that not?
Not so much Ann Summers, no. What you'd find with Ann Summers is that's mainly a lingerie shop or nightwear. So the amount and degree of articles that they have is not really what a sex shop would look like.
Okay,
so,
thank you for the clarification.
So yeah, so
Okay.
Any further questions? I did have one question, Laura, and that is, we have a nil policy, but that is not the only determining factor when you're considering an application. Can you just talk us through what sort of weight the nil policy has when you're making your decisions on applications?
If we get an application, to be fair, it won't be us making the decision. All applications will come to a panel, irrespective of whether we get objections or not. So that's the first thing to sort of make really clear. You will get any applications. The nil policy isn't really sort of a determining factor. It's just something we're trying to use to say we suggest it's probably not the sort of area where we're likely to have this kind of premises. We're not really sure that it's appropriate. It won't mean that it's just going to be rejected. It's really still, you will look at each application on its own merits and you'll determine it accordingly, decide, depending on where it is and exactly what the premises is intending to do, you know, what the layout is, what the character is, where exactly it is. Are there schools nearby? Are there religious buildings nearby? Are there drug and alcohol treatment centres nearby? So it's very, very dependent on, you know, whether it's a suitable location. And I think we're just kind of saying generally we think South and Vale are both areas where it might be difficult to find a location that would really be appropriate for this type of venue.
Thanks, Laura. So it's like a material planning consideration in planning.
Kind of, yeah. So probably not going to be suitable, but, you know, by all means, try and convince us otherwise, I think is the easiest way.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Sadler and then Councillor James Lowry.
Yeah, I was just interested. I mean, that number is a very small sample, isn't it? It's it's just quite
all
incredible.
councillors as well.
Hmm?
All councillors.
All councillors.
Yeah, all councillors. Yeah, I spotted that too. The fact that it was all councillors.
Mhm.
And then so when you go down there and go, gosh, it's 33% strongly agree, and of course you realise that's just one person because it's a third.
Yes.
But I mean, why is that? Why is there so little interest? I mean, potentially it's got the potential to be quite controversial, isn't it? So I would have thought that would have.
We thought
yeah,
we might have got a couple of public comments, but yeah, absolutely no interest. Maybe it's because we haven't had such a venue in the area for quite a long time. I believe there used to be one on the car park in Henley many moons ago, but you know, there's not been one for quite a long time now, I suspect. So yeah, I don't think generally anybody sees it as being particularly crucial to their lives, and maybe just had a quick look at it because it was sent to everybody on the consultation portal that the council has, so it went to a lot of people. I suspect they're trying to
Councillor James Lowry.
So I'm just going through the right, bring it back up, that's annoying. I was just going through the what is a sex establishment, and forgive me for my naivety here, but out of all of those, brothels are not one of them.
No, brothels are illegal, so you couldn't license it because it's illegal. Where you've got multiple people with somebody running the business, should we say, that's illegal. So it'd be a police matter.
Forgive my naivety then.
That's absolutely fine. It's only something I became aware of in my previous role at a different local authority, where somebody from the police actually rang to say, do they have a licence? So we had to explain to them that, yeah, after double checking.
Councillor Allred.
There is plainly not a lot of excitement about this. Nobody has wanted to set up a business in South Oxfordshire. None of the public have chosen to respond. A split response from 3 councillors. There is not much to just. I almost found myself wondering, why did we go to the expense of this? And then you flip that over and you say that if there were an application, everybody would say, why the hell didn't you have a policy? Why didn't somebody think about it? Well, they have. And here we've got a policy that if there is an application, there is a sensible structured policy to deal with it. And to me, that's the long and short of it.
Yeah, I agree. Particularly as local government reorganisation is going on, it's good to have these policies on the books. Should we become part of Greater Oxford or something? Anyway. Are there any further questions? No, I see none. So with that in mind, do I have a proposer for us to adopt this new joint sex establishment licensing policy? Councillor Higgins, thank you. Is that seconded? Councillor MacDonald, thank you. Shall I see the vote now, please? All approved? That I see, that's unanimous as well. So that new policy is approved. Thank you very much, Laura, for your time.
Thank you.
And thanks, Diane and Susie as well. And with that, I think I can bring this meeting to a close at 6:27.
Could you please stop the broadcast, Susie?